Welcome
to the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Hey, what's up, Triple P Nation? Dr. J here. Excited to come to you with our Best of the Summer series. So we're doing a really special feature for the remaining portion of the summer, and it's encapsulating the 5 best interviews that I get to choose for our members that we've done over the last 6 years. And so if you're new to the program, it's probably likely you haven't heard these interviews. If you have been with us from the beginning, again, thanks so much. Love you guys and appreciate you for being so loyal, being a part of this journey that we're taking here with the Triple P Life brand. And but I'll tell you what, it'd be great for you to hear it again, because these are some really transformative individuals who are leaders in their fields, who are CEOs, who are best-selling authors, people who have really upped their game, improved their performances, and now are sharing their passion, love, and wisdom with us. And I've had an incredible benefit of having them on the show and getting an opportunity to meet and know them and create relationships with them. And my first one is Bob Doyle. Now, Bob was part of the Law of Attraction, The Secret, when it first came out. And I invited Bob on because he has a book called Wealth Beyond Reason. And the Wealth Beyond Reason was written for those who really have a strong desire to improve their abundance and prosperity and want it to come quickly and naturally. So what he does is he takes the scientific approach to explaining sometimes the metaphysically categorized, quote unquote, law of attraction. And he does that for anyone of any background and can claim the life that they truly want to live without any limitations of any kind whatsoever. So it's written with the skeptics in mind. So if you're someone who says, oh, law of attraction, that stuff doesn't work, this book is specifically for you, especially if you're struggling with attracting the kind of abundance and prosperity you want in your life. And it's his program in particular that inspired us to do the Money Mindset 3-Day Challenge. Again, the link will be in the show notes here if you haven't taken that yet. And also our Money Mindset Mastermind, because these concepts of wealth, which comes from really between our ears first, you cannot be wealthy if you don't have a wealth-driven mindset. How do you create that? Bob talks about that. We talk about that, which I think is going to really provide you some great insight, great tools necessary as you look to close out this year to set you up for success in 2025. So enjoy my interview with Bob Doyle. Hey, Triple P Nation. As I mentioned, my guest this week is Bob Doyle. And I'm really excited to have Bob on the show. As you know, as regular listeners to the show, we talk a lot about the power of mindset and how it affects your quality of life and your ability to manifest great relationships or to attract abundance or good health or whatever it is that you want to experience in life. And Bob really is an expert. He was, as I mentioned, a featured expert in the film, the book called The Secret, which I believe now, 16 or 17 years ago, Bob, it was released?
Yeah, if you really want to rub it right in, sure. It was a long time ago. I get it.
So, I said, Bob, it's always great for people to hear from a different perspective, someone with your expertise. And I invited him on the show, and he's here today. Bob, welcome. Say hi.
Hi. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you. So as we know, where we're at isn't always where we start. Tell us how you kind of got into this work, because this is really how you didn't start your career, correct?
No, not at all. Being in any sort of industry where I'm supposed to be helping people was never on my radar. I knew when I was just a very young child that I wanted to go into broadcasting. And aside from it seeming like the most creative thing I could possibly imagine, my dad was in it and I watched what he did. I also thought, and I don't have to deal with people or anything. That of course developed as I got older. I'm thinking I'm in the perfect industry. I can hide behind a microphone and just do my voices and be silly. And that's all I need to do. And so I did that for about 7 years. And I found that because I was in a major market, I was in Atlanta, which you know, and I was pretty early in my career, and they just weren't going to let me do all the stuff I wanted to do. And so I, being young and impatient, said, all right, fine, I don't need you, I'm out of here. So that began this several year search for, okay, well, now what am I going to do? And nothing was working. I was trying to start businesses and it's just nothing. And so that's when I kind of threw my hands up in the air and said, okay, there must be something, invisible, if you will, something that's not like logical about why nothing's working for me. That eventually led me into more metaphysical conversations and, meditation and visualization. And then of course, the whole idea that we could create our reality or have some impact on it. So all of that eventually led me to information around what I eventually started, with the law of attraction. First, it was wealth consciousness, but really what got my attention was sort of the conversation of the quantum physics of it all. Like my thoughts were energy and they had a real impact. And that did it for me. It went from being this woo-woo thing to science somehow. And that was all I needed. And so with that sort of like, okay, I get it. The lights came on. My inner thoughts, they're super important. It's not just what I say on the outside. So I began at that time, which I would not have known calling it this, but a rewiring process in my head. But what that looked like, I started doing all the law of attraction-y things, like a vision board and, the visualization and making lists and all of that. And things started happening. I got very excited and started sharing what I was learning through my first sort of online program called Wealth Beyond Reason, which started out as just mostly other people's stuff and my ideas on it. But over the course of a few years, I got more engaged and sort of up-leveled who I was being in that conversation. And then the program just grew into this monster of law of attraction information. And so when Rhonda Byrne, who created The Secret, was out there looking for law of attraction experts and such, she found my program. There was a lot to see. And I think she just wanted that voice, that sort of, like I was just this guy. I wasn't in the personal development industry. I didn't have this conversation that people knew about. I'm just this guy who learned this stuff and was having results and was teaching it effectively. So that's how The Secret happened. And of course, that changed my world, as you might imagine, because even though I'd had success before The Secret and really changed my life, got out of debt and was really enjoying it, like I had done it. Then The Secret happened. It was like, oh my God, who am I supposed to be right now? I had my own personal identity crisis. And then I finally, when live streaming came around, that broadcaster in me could wake up again and I could broadcast my message in a fun and creative way. And that's when I really found the joy again in the work I'm doing. But that's the basics of the law of attraction journey.
I could see why you were drawn to media. You have that voice, you know what I mean? So your voice is the voice, perfect for media. And it not only is coming from wisdom and knowledge, but it's very impactful.
Well, thank you very much. My dad had it too. And so, yeah, I think it's great that I get to use it in this way, but I still do voiceover. I still do broadcasting. There's a lot of things I do besides this. And really, that's kind of a part of my message is that, a lot of people spend so much time trying to figure out that one thing they're supposed to do or who they're supposed to be. And really, this is the life we have. And we can be a lot of different things and do a lot of different things. If we tie it to money, okay, then we get in our heads about it. But just to be creative and be self-expressed is really, I believe, what we're here to do. So I have a lot of things that I do creatively that are just for fun and for myself. And then there are some that I do that I earn money doing,
Sure.
It's just really about having the life experience and following all those things that are inside me.
So this process is not easy, as you and I both know, and it could be quite a struggle. I've been practicing, this kind of work now for the better part of 25 years. And I always tell the people I work with, you're never a finished product, right? It's a constant evolution. It's a constant check and recheck and refinement. And so if you think there's a final destination, that's an illusion.
And why would that would be death. We are here to expand and grow. I mean, that we are part of a universe that's our very nature. And it's when we convince ourselves that we can't grow anymore, can't follow our dreams, can't be that person, and we stop our own growth, that's when we start to feel it. We need to grow. And if we don't, it starts to result in disease and, of course, anger and resentment and depression and all of those things.
100% agree with that. That's a really powerful and important point. Like I said, there's only two directions in life. There's forward and backward. There's growth and contraction. And contraction ultimately leads to, 6 feet under. It's not a good place to be. I'd rather be in a growth mode.
Yes. And so it's learning to embrace the growth, the discomfort that comes with growth. It's really interesting because we as human beings will go through a lot of uncomfortable stuff to learn non-negotiable things like walking and talking and reading and writing and all those things, that the minimum stuff for being a human. We'll just do it. And yes, it's uncomfortable, and we make mistakes, and we get feedback, and we make adjustments, and we grow, and we rewire our brain to support that new behavior. That's how we learn everything. But somehow, when it comes to personal development and achieving our goals, now it's some mystical other thing. No, the same exact rules apply. If we want to be somebody who achieves results that we want, we need to learn who that person is, what is the behavior they have that's different than what we have, and start doing that behavior over and over and over, and use this amazing reality creation machine called our brain to visualize how that is, where we get to visualize who we are in the world without even actually having to physically do it. That's the miracle of our brain. And we can run that scenario over and over and over to rehearse different ways of being than the way that we've automatically been that has kept us stuck. And then when we rehearse it, and then that situation comes up, we recognize, oh my gosh, there's my autopilot behavior, and I have choices now in my behavior. It's not just like I'm deer in the headlights or have to go back to my autopilot. I've rehearsed this new way. And as soon as we start implementing that, the rewiring process biologically is really underway.
And that's so cool. And let's get into the autopilot in just a second. But I want to start back with, how do we develop? How do we acquire these limiting beliefs? And I think that's the first step for people to understand is how do we acquire these limiting beliefs before we can begin to objectively look at our belief system, decide, okay, does this belief serve me or doesn't it serve me? And then we can begin to implement steps to shift and change that. So how do we acquire these limiting or negative beliefs?
Well, the wonderful thing is the same way we acquired them is the way that we will change them. So, but when we were born, of course, our brain's just wide open. We're saying yes to everything. It's plastic and moldable as it will ever be. We don't have any ability to assess or evaluate information coming in. So if our parents or anybody in our environment has limiting beliefs about money or success or what's possible for them, whatever that is, those are the only thoughts and opinions you have coming in. So of course, you're very likely to be wired with those opinions because you've got nothing else. Your brain's just ready to receive what is out there. So then that wiring, all that programming creates your foundation of truth. Now, when you start to become aware and start to evaluate and assess things, you're assessing everything based on all of that wiring. So that wiring has nothing to do with truth. It has to do with what your parents believed. And that may not serve you at all. So the beauty is, so that's how we acquired it. We just let it in. We had the same thoughts over and over and over again. We never had any conflicting thoughts because we had no reason to. So our brain just said, yes, 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 very powerful, gets wired in there pretty good. But now when we start to go, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable, something's not right here, and we want to be more conscious about changing who we are and the results we get in our world, well, we've got a lifetime of wiring going on there. So changing it biologically is going to take time. And people just need to understand that there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make it not worth doing. And it's like, oh, well, no, I needed an easier thing because I see all these personal development programs that practice 30 days, 45 days. Nobody knows how long it's going to take for you to rewire your brain. Anybody who promises that is lying because they don't know your story. They don't know how much repetition it's going to take and all the stuff that's going to come up. But it's up to you to consistently bring in the new, more empowering messages instead of the old ones, not in alignment with or at the same time as. Like, these old stories have to go because that's what if you keep telling them as your excuse or your validation for why you are where you are, you're just fortifying those neural pathways in your brain. They're going to be readily accessible next time something comes up and triggers you. However, if you've spent time replacing those with something more empowering that leads you in the right direction over and over and over and over, it's going to get easier and easier because biologically neural pathways are being formed in your brain. The old behavior will become less autopilot. You will create a new autopilot, and now you have new autopilot results.
And that's how we transform. And that's how we continue to grow and expand. And then you'll hit new limiting beliefs that you don't recognize that, maybe were dormant or just below the surface because how the brain fires, it wires. So you have those repetitive thoughts over and over and over. As you mentioned, you build those neural networks. You just want them to be the ones that empower you, become the dominant ones that fire more rapidly, more consistently than the previous limiting ones that held us back and, would cause us to make us feel uncomfortable when faced with a new challenge. So I think is a great way that you really explain that. The other thing about the autopilot is, you touched on this briefly, is that, 90% of our day we live on our autopilot, which is really the reticular activating system of the brain. Most of the stuff we don't really have to give conscious thought to. We can just do it. We don't really, it doesn't really take a lot of energy. And so I tell people all the time is we have to move away from that. Yeah, we don't have to get too crazy about unloading the dishwasher or cutting the grass, but the point being is that we have to focus on being more intentional if we're going to shift and rewire the mind. So let's talk about that, some of the behaviors, some of the tools and tactics to help rewire and create new empowering beliefs.
Sure. Well, whenever I work with somebody, the first thing I do is I put them through this little quiz that I created just for this purpose of shining a light on autopilot behavior. And just so full transparency, I made the whole thing up based on my experience of 20 years, but it doesn't matter because it gives us both me and the person I'm working with, the information we need to be able to more easily and readily identify when they are in autopilot mode. And as you alluded to, I would say that it's way more than 90%. There's autopilot that just has us function, and not bump into things and all of that. But the autopilot that I'm really talking about is how we make meaning out of things and how we automatically will assess a situation without really any conscious thought. The trigger fires off all this unconscious wiring and we create a meaning right in that moment without thinking too much about it a lot of the time. But that meaning, that moment of making meaning is the reality creation. That's when your reality is created. That meaning you give it is everything. So if you are interpreting your situation in a way that you give it meaning like this isn't good, well, that's because your wiring has calculated all of this and said this isn't good. But that's just one interpretation of what this is. One person might interpret that feeling to mean, oh, I guess I better stop and give up on my dreams because it's clear this isn't going to work. And another person will say, thank you for that feedback. Now I know how to adjust. I'm going to keep moving forward because this freaking goal of mine is non-negotiable.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. So talk about the tools and tactics that you teach specifically to shift that subconscious mind.
So once a person knows what their autopilot behavior is, the work becomes recognizing it throughout the course of the day. But that, as I mentioned before, that's just the first part. What are you going to do once you recognize it? It's one thing to say, oh my God, yeah, I really am in autopilot. Like so many of my responses are not conscious, but that's only the first part. It's a crucial part. Because to do this work, you really do need to become an observer. You need to be able to go into observation mode like that. And that's really the first skill I teach people so that before they get caught up in the autopilot response and all the emotions and all the chemistry that comes with it, they recognize that they're in that this is happening. And then instead they do the replacement behavior. Now, how do they know what the replacement behavior is? Well, part of my process with people is a daily check-in on that. Meditation, visualization, whatever you want to call it. It's an exercise in the morning and in the evening. And in the morning, it's very Joe Dispenza-ish. In other words, create your day. If you've got something coming up that you know that traditionally you get triggered, it's a disempowering situation, maybe you're dreading it, whatever it is, you get to rehearse how you'd like to be. You can't control what's going to happen on the outside, but you can control how you respond to it. And if things have happened in the past that you know trigger you, you get to rehearse that over and over, those same things, except this time you get to see yourself and feel yourself and mentally hear yourself doing something different, being something different, and then imagining how that's going to play out. Then as you do your day and the opportunity arises, you rehearsed it, you do it. And at that point, again, like I said before, biologically, you have now put that into the physical. Your brain is even, it's even more in terms of the neuroplasticity, the rewiring part. But now you have also created change out there. It's not just on a vision board. It's not just on a list or in your imagination. The first time you throw the world a different version of you, they have to respond different. They have to. That's where change begins. And then all the feedback starts and you begin that part of the journey.
So it's an observer of self and not just outwardly, it's inwardly, right? Your own triggers, right? Your own triggers, right? How are you showing up? What are you feeling? What emotion are you feeling? rather than just automatically just responding the way you would normally respond.
Yes. Yes, because again, if you do the visualization work at the beginning and the end of each day, you are hopefully getting very, very fired up about the results of this change, of this rewiring effort. When you're really clear on who you're going to become and the value you're going to give or whatever is important to you, this gets very exciting. And as you start to implement it and you start to see the change, it becomes easier to do. This is the key, though. You have to start being this person now. There's this whole fallacy out there that even if someone wouldn't admit it, that, oh, I'll be that when I get that stuff. No. The reason that person that you're aspiring to be has that stuff is they took the journey. They had the ups and the downs and they learned the thing. They didn't get on a vision board and boom, it was there the next day. Because how would they possibly sustain that lifestyle? They don't even know how they got it, right? So you take the journey and you embrace it and you say, thank you for the challenges. It's all how you frame it. And if I say this all the time, but if the inventors of the world approach their inventions like we approach personal development, we would have nothing. We'd still be in caves because, well, I tried for a year to make this thing work. It's obviously the universe doesn't want it to happen. No, they said this thing's going to get made no matter what. And they made it. And this thing, this us, this we that we want to become is going to get made, but you got to take the journey.
No question. So why is it so hard for so many people to take the journey or stay on the course?
Because they've learned that it should be easy or that discomfort is bad or whatever. Not everybody has those, see? I mean, you know this, not everybody thinks this way. Some people take it on and we see them on the news, right? They're the people who freaking go for it. But the rest of us have learned, oh, well, that sounds hard, or they've got their limiting beliefs about no matter how much this makes sense that we're talking about, that we can change our brain, they still have a thing about, well, it's not going to work for me. That may work for other people, but not for me because they got all this experience that says it. But that bypasses the entire logic of our conversation, which is you're a human being, you have a human brain. This is how it works. Send it new stuff and it will change. The end. There's no debate. It's not woo-woo. There's not mystical. No one's debating that the brain can change. Of course, this can work for you. You just have to decide, I'm going to send new information on a regular basis, and I'm going to say goodbye to my stories. And if I hear myself telling them, I'm going to stop and I'm going to make up a different story. Because guess what? That story that you're telling is the truth as to why you can't have. That's not true either. So you may as well make up a story that's empowering and live into that one because you're living into the not true one. And it's not getting you very far.
Upload new software, get new output.
Yes, but you got to keep running. You got to delete the old.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. You got to clean the operating system of the old stuff. No question about it. Okay. So talk to me about, because we've thrown this term around, neuroplasticity. So let's talk to specifically explain to people what that means.
It just means your brain can change. It's just the ability of your brain to change. And this is the thing about what I love about this conversation, because 20 years I was talking about law of attraction and explaining the science of it and this vibration and energy and resistance and 8 million questions people have. Yeah, but what about this? What about that? We don't need that. We never did. All we need to know is our brain can change and what we need to do to change it. So my whole teaching part of it's just your brain can change. That's all you need to know. Now, how do you want it to change? That's the work, not studying the hemispheres and the neurons and all that stuff, because now we're just into trying to figure out the science of it again, like the law of attraction, which is nice to know, I guess, but it's not critical for you to know. And if you get stuck on it and need to understand it before you'll do anything, it's no good for you. And that's what I saw in the law of attraction conversation for the better part of 2 decades.
Bob, does an individual's associations matter when they're going through this process? And if so, what do you recommend? I'm talking about a family member who is not supportive or encouraging or wants to keep them stuck in the same place because the comfort is the known, right? Yes. So even though maybe it's full of conflict, it's the known conflict and it's a place of comfort for them. How do you handle that with individuals?
That's actually one of the types that we test for with our quiz is the people pleaser. And that is the person who, as you mentioned, they really are ready for change. Something has woken in them. And despite the fact that they were raised in this environment with these people, with those thoughts, they now are awake and they want to go for it. But the moment they do, if a family member gives them a weird look or a tone in their voice, or just outright tells them, who do you think you are? That kind of stuff, that they stop their progress. That's what a people pleaser does. And they do it a lot of times because they just don't want everybody to be uncomfortable. So they just stop. Well, but the problem is everybody's still uncomfortable. They're just not telling you about it because you're not flaunting their discomfort because you're not going for your dream anymore. And you, of course, have committed spiritual suicide because that's the life that's in you to have. And you're telling yourself it's not worth it, so they'll be comfortable. So that's no good. The best thing you can do for everyone concerned is to go for it and succeed. Now, that ideally, yes, everyone would be inspired. I see now, it's possible. I too shall do that. Maybe that'll happen, but it doesn't matter. That's not what should determine your journey. We have people in our lives and they come in and out for all kinds of reasons, family, friends, and we've sort of developed these societal ideas, at least in this part of the country or this part of the world, that ending relationships somehow, or if someone moves out of your life, it's a bad thing. Oh no, I've been with them for 30 years. I can't just cut them out of my life, even though every time we get together, I feel like crap afterwards and they naysay everything I do, etc. But I've known them forever. So that's the kind of dysfunctional thinking that keeps people stuck. When you go out and be this new version of you in that powerful way, yeah, your relationships will evolve. But you will also evolve into new ones, that you will attract the people that you really want to attract, the people who are attracted to who you are being, support you, are a stand for you, can help you, will lift you up. It's crucial that you find those people. We don't do this. It's not meant for this journey to be taken alone, but we're never going to find those people until we start being like who we want to be.
Perfect example. It's been my experience on my own journey, right? Is people for reasons and seasons. So as I shift, I change, they may resonate with me. I may not resonate with them. They move out of my life, and you attract new people and at the same time, new opportunities. So I think it's really well said that embrace that. That's a great thing. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. And it should be a reason why it keeps you from staying on your journey and doing this work.
Yes. And look, I don't want to, I want to acknowledge that it's real easy to say that, but if it's a family member or a spouse or a parent, you can hear us say this and then go, yeah, but right, because there's a lot there. There's a lot of wiring there. There's a lot of emotion and, of course, chemistry and stuff. So it's not going to be super easy, but there are tools to deal with those types of things. There are tools to deal with the emotional flare-ups and the body and the chemistry flush and all of those things. There's breathing. There's things that you can do to short circuit the automatic responses that you have so that you can replace them with the others, so that you don't always have to be stopped by the emotional responses of others.
I had a very close family member and I just had to set boundaries. I set boundaries and I set timeline. And I really basic said, this was okay. This was not okay. If you want to engage, great. If you want to engage this way, I choose not to. And that completely changed the relationship. Took maybe about 2 or 3 weeks that knew that I was serious and the relationship changed.
I have had those moments in my life too, where I have had people I love dearly, but like this behavior is not going to fly, and setting that boundary. And it was great. It was great. And they, in my case, they just respected the boundary and it was good for everybody. But, that you have to own that stuff. That respecting your own boundaries is indicative of what is going on inside you about your self-worth and what you feel you deserve. And by the way, none of this has anything to do with deserving anything, but that's how we've learned it. But, the most woo-woo thing that I say anymore these days is that we are a physical manifestation of the energy that is the universe, right? We're not separate from it. We're a part of it. And we were born with all these senses and our passions, and being a human is a really cool thing. And we've got this brain that allows us to learn to do and have whatever, if we will just use it that way. So it is I believe, why we are here, because it's through us that the universe experiences itself. We earn the right to have exactly what we want by just being here, by being pushed out in this energetic form. We don't have to deserve it. We don't have to be worthy or any of that. We just got to get clear. Who do we want to be? What's this ride we want to take?
Society and culture in general teaches divisiveness in so many ways and shapes and forms, right? That we're not connected. It's that old, treat others as you want to be treated. mindset and concept. But we are as much a part of nature and of the universe, and more so, we're kind of living in its world. You know what I mean? And we're shaping our world by the energy we put out into that world. And it could be microscopically, it could be macro, depending on what type of energy you're putting out there. And I think that's the concept of being intentional, is what do you want the world to reflect back to you is what you're putting out. And if you could be mindful of what you're getting back, stop and check. You said, right? Awareness, self-introspection. What am I putting out that's attracting that back to me?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the brutal honesty that we have to have with ourselves. We really have to be ready to be brutally honest and go, wow, I'm doing that, right? Or I'm saying that, or I'm treating them like that, or whatever it is. And you have to see the consequences of that. And if you get to the point where you see that this behavior, this way of your being is absolutely going to stop you repeatedly from moving forward, you got to get rid of it.
Well, I've talked about, you mentioned briefly, morning, after evening meditation. What does a typical routine look like for you?
Okay, so I start my day with breath work. I'm a big fan of breath work. Whatever practice calls to you, I would recommend doing it. It has so many psychological, emotional, and physiological benefits. It helps you to reset. It helps you to get present. It helps you flush out a lot of the mental noise. You get these amazing moments of clarity and so on. It's just awesome self-care. So I start my day with it, and I will do various breath exercises throughout the day. It's my favorite way to reset. And then I will roll into something similar to what does my day look like today? What have I got ahead? It's kind of like looking at your calendar and going, this is okay. This is what I've got to do. Now, who do I want to be? And so it's, again, that visualization exercise. And then it's really, that's it for until the evening. That's it for like the assignment or the work or whatever of the program. The rest of it is you doing your life and catching it, implementing what you have visualized in the morning. And there's a journaling process too in the evening, and where you flesh out, if you're to get it out of your head, get it on paper, flesh out different scenarios of ways of being, journaling. It helps you. So all of that. And then out there in the world, though, that's your workshop. And we have tools, and there is every day I give my students, a little video that just is a short video. It takes 3 or 4 minutes. It's a distinction in this conversation that they can be thinking about. It's generally one of those, wow, you really nailed it today. It just lands on them that way, that kind of stuff. And then just, again, these things that I give them to do, like breathing every day, so that they also start the wiring. So I think I moved from what I do to what I have them do, but it's the same thing.
Sure, of course.
It's just that basic process of checking your autopilot wiring. And look, I'm always finding new stuff that is not like serving me. But I had such tremendous, just to tell my story, because sometimes people ask, in terms of the wiring, I was brought up in a family where just going negative was the autopilot. You just go no first, and then you figure out whether you're going to do it. And so that's just how my life has been. And it's not a lot of fun to have that automatic no. And also I would interpret things negative, and I would get stuck there, like worry about them. I was a chronic worrier. I had to analyze everything. And my wiring justified that. To me, that was the responsible thing to do. Well, if there's a situation, you got to worry about it. Otherwise, you're not being responsible. Well, that's just one very destructive way of thinking that I did forever, until a few years ago when I had this sort of aha moment on my own around rewiring and where the focus is, and another level of being honest about what my thoughts were. I knew I had this response, but I was telling myself that that's just who I am. Well, now I know, well, that's optional. I can change that. So who do I want to be? How would I like to respond? Like I would get triggered. I was divorced 2012. And so for a long time, emails and things like that would trigger me, and it would just, for days. And now I have learned to not go negative, to immediately go, well, that there are other, to know that no matter what my quick autopilot response is, that there are other ways of thinking and better. So I am free from what I thought was a lifetime sort of curse of having to go through that negative process first. All the chemistry involved with it is just a low vibe feeling. It's just not great, to not having it anymore. And I thought I was the toughest case in the world. So if I could do it, you could do it.
You mentioned the chemistry, and and I don't know if people quite understand that your body produces the chemistry based on the emotion you create. And you literally can become addicted to the chemistry. So
Yes.
whether it's anxiety or fear or anger, you literally get addicted. And that's why part of the reason why you automatically respond into stressful situations using the same emotions, because it's the known emotion. It's the one your body's most familiar with and the one you know how to handle per se, handle in a sense, you know what it feels like. So, yeah, so now conversely, if you respond with calmness or kindness or serenity or gratitude or love, those have their own chemical response, and you can get addicted to those in that positive way just as easily, which Joe Dispenza talks about in his book, Breaking the Habit of You. And which was a groundbreaker. I know you had mentioned Dr. Dispenza before. Any other who have you really seen as kind of the cutting edge, who you've really studied at?
No, but except the qualifier is that I've really studied. But I know that John Assaraf, my other colleague
Yes.
from The Secret, is doing a lot of great stuff with this and has been for quite some time too. So it's a logical place for this whole law of attraction conversation to go to, because it brings it out of the woo-woo and into real life. I tell people who know me for The Secret and the law of attraction, look, I'm not anti-law of attraction. I'm anti-obsessing over it when it doesn't really matter. I am pro you transforming. So whether it's the law of attraction or a Tony Robbins seminar or a Joe Dispenza meditation event, you've got to get rewired. So whatever process you undertake, it's got to rewire. So that's why the work that I do is all about how do we just directly get to rewiring? How do we just do that without having to learn tons of processes and theories and all of that? Let's just do it. It's behavioral. So that's the approach I take.
Bob, you talked about some elements of your routine that you teach or that you do. Do you do anything with affirmations?
Yes, I'm not on my own. I mean, it's not like I study affirmations on a regular basis. I will do things like write a list, which is basically an affirmation, like lists of things that I want to be, do, have, or experience. That's something I'll do periodically. And that's kind of like an affirmation. It's just not something I repeat formally like an affirmation. But again, your life needs to be an affirmation. Your autopilot responses need to be an affirmation. So if affirmations work for you and you like doing them and like listening to them, and you can really embody them and put yourself in, don't just listen to them passively. I mean, they can work that way. But if you want to, the way that I approach affirmations is to really focus on what's being said and what your response is. If you're having a negative response, like I'm not buying any of this, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to use a release technique such as emotional freedom techniques or some of these others to deal with that autopilot response. It's critical to do that. And so if you're doing affirmations or visualizing or meditating with pictures or however you want to put it, and you're getting those feelings of, I don't know about this, this just feels like a lie, combining them with any of these release techniques is the way that I always recommend doing affirmations. Again, it can work the other way. I just think it's a lot quicker if you deal with the resistance as it comes up.
Be honest with you, about 8 months or so ago, I mean, I've known about EFT for a long time. So I don't need to do that. I started to do it. Boy, it's a really helpful and useful tool.
Isn't that interesting? I resisted it too. I was told about it early in my law of attraction career. And I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. I just didn't, because I liked science. I wanted to understand what was going on. And it was a very popular EFT practitioner named Brad Yates, who's got just hundreds and hundreds of EFT videos out there on YouTube for free. And he said, well, did you ever try it? I'm like, well, no. So I tried it one day. I think it was just like in traffic. I was getting all, riled up about something, and I tried it, and it had there was no denying that it had an impact. And so then I dove into it, started sharing it with my students, and it made such a huge difference. And it's been an integral part of everything I teach since then, along with others too, but EFT is a big one.
Yeah, it's great. All right. So you talk about manifesting on autopilot.
Yes. Well, because we're manifesting on autopilot anyway.
That's true.
So it's just, we just want to manifest what we want on autopilot, right? So if we're clear that this is not this, whatever this is not the autopilot we want anymore, then we just have to use our brains and our imagination and our passion and those desires that we've been ignoring and rationalizing away to decide what that next thing is.
Great. Great. I mean, this is, I knew this was going to be a fun conversation. I love the perspective that you're bringing it. Like I said, it's always great to hear from a different point of view. What are you working on now? I know you said you work with clients. What are you working on now? And where do you see this work moving in the future? And I've said this is, I'm sorry, before you answer, my belief is this: we're going to look at, you remember, a generation, 2 generations ago, no one could ever conceptualize people spending $150 a month to go exercise, right? I mean, they worked all day, they came home, they took care of a family, they worked around the house. What do I need to go pay $150 to go exercise? Well, the advent of technology and a change in culture, people literally have to make time to go exercise. I think the same movement is upon us. I believe a generation or so from now, they're going to look back and say, you mean, no, everyone didn't do this mindset manifestation techniques about visualization and meditation and EFT, whatever you want to throw under that umbrella? That's my belief.
Well, I do. I really hope that's the case. And, you can see if you're looking at a curve, it feels like we are escalating in that sort of conversation and consciousness and on a pretty rapid scale, kind of along the lines of our technology. So yeah, who knows, 5-10 years from now? I mean, I think The Secret did a really good thing in terms of just having people have different conversations with themselves. And even if they wanted to debate it or argue it, at least they were thinking about new things. So, and then of course, now that's led to this more scientific approach that a lot of us are taking. So it's making it more and more real. So yes, I think that the more that it's really just, and again, it's so simple. It's like the most basic thing. Our brain learns. That's what it does. Let's teach it. The end. That's it. So, it's just like if people just start waking up to, yeah, this is really, of course, then yes, I think that can change. But if what am I working on? What am I excited about? To expose my true geekness here, I'm a huge metaverse person. I've been into virtual reality since, it became a consumer thing back in 2016. I've always seen myself doing this work in the metaverse, especially when it was the law of attraction conversation, and you can create anything right in there, and the ultimate visualization tool. But it's also awesome for things like brain rewiring, et cetera, but also doing events and meeting. And it's just, it's just a fun place to be. So I'm doing a lot with the metaverse and trying to indoctrinate people into, hey, I know that you're resisting it because like the web, they don't know, why do I need that? So, but I am willing to take that journey with all of its challenges, and there are many, to be, kind of trying to lead a curve. But it's just, it lights me up so much. And I do know it's where we're going. So I may be there for a while waiting for people to catch up, but that's the story I'm taking life. So,
I look forward to learning more about that, because it sounds fascinating. You're right. I mean, it's limitless what you can do, and perhaps maybe the impact it can have on shaping minds could be exponential compared to how we're doing it now. Who knows?
Yes, no question. It's as a visualization tool, it's an empowerment tool. Even just embodying an avatar can have such a have an impact on your mindset. If you are feeling insecure and you embody an avatar that is, what I'm talking about, it can absolutely change your mental state. And so there's so much positive with it, along with all the other challenges, with the metaverse and all of that. But, I'm willing to take the journey.
Bob, if there was a book, someone's listening here, like, I've been thinking about it. I really need to start doing some work, and I've been hearing about this and I'm ready. Is there a book you'd recommend someone to begin their journey, or a podcast, or outside of ours, of course, but
You took the word. I wasn't going to say. Well, you know what? I always point back to the book that started my journey. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't read it in a while, and it's probably time for me to revisit it. But it had such an impact. I still, and I've got people, because I recommend it so much, I get people telling me, oh my God, that book. So I can still confidently recommend it. It was the book that turned the lights on for me. Part of my story where it's like, oh yeah, quantum thoughts. I get it. It's a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money by a guy named David Kikandi. And he actually ended up being the creative consultant for The Secret, because Rhonda Byrne found him through my program. which mentioned him and had his book as a part of it. So Happy Pocket Full of Money was just, it just really is a big picture look at how things work. And it really made a huge impact on me. It's a great journey starter.
Yeah. It's funny. I've recommended that book just recently on the podcast.
No, you're kidding. That's great.
Yeah, no. I mean, hey, there's a million great books out there, but we had just completed Charge What You're Worth Mastermind for entrepreneurs. And that was one of the books that we took some information from and people really got a lot from. So that's a great suggestion.
Well, good. That's so validating that it's still holding up. Yeah,
absolutely. So up to this point, here we are, I've often said we have got to be, Gandhi said, never let someone with dirty shoes walk through the garden of your mind. And I said, if someone had asked me, is there something that you would recommend for people as they're taking this journey? And I said, really protect your mindset by being discerning of who and what influences you're going to allow in your life. And for me, first and foremost is television, media, news. Sorry, I know you're in that business, but it's nothing but it's a toxic waste dump. And if you're somebody who goes home each night and spends an hour or two watching the news, I'm sorry, man, it's going to be almost impossible to rewire your brain, because you're just getting those limiting beliefs you have are just getting reinforced over and over and over. Social media is another one I have to limit, even though I'm in business, I have to limit because, there's that side of it, particularly when it comes to Twitter. Are there any recommendations that you have similar to that for people on the journey?
It's really good. I am in full agreement with everything you just said. I also I don't watch television really in general that much. I mean, I get entertained by videos and stuff, but like there's no shows that I watch and things like that. Because even though it sounds so like prudish or silly or whatever, once it gets in there, it's in there. Mm-hmm. And it becomes the pool of possible outcomes. Right? It gets in there and it intertwines with all of your other beliefs and systems. And now you have to compare it and it's just there. And so, somebody told me a few years ago, like on Facebook, for example, because I don't do Twitter very much, but I do a lot of stuff on Facebook. And, the feed was just bumming me out and stuff. And they were just like, look, just never click any of those things or say, hide this or whatever. And just after a while, it'll never show up. And that's true. So I live in a completely different planet than the person across the street who has different filters than me. I'm not processing a lot of the stuff they're processing that they can do nothing about. Let's be very clear that what we're really talking about here is people who just get obsessed and have opinions about and spend time arguing about things that they can't control, and really, when it comes down to it, do not impact their life. It is a freaking distraction. We need to focus on who we want to be in the world and have our experience. Forget what's going on out there. It's all an illusion anyway.
Agreed. Well said. Well said, Bob. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad we're able to get you on the show, and I wish you nothing but success in helping transform a world that needs transformation.
Well, thank you. And likewise, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So this is my guest today, Bob Doyle. Check him out. Bob, where can people, you said on Facebook, where else can they find you?
Yeah. So I guess the hub for all things Bob would be meetbobdoyle.com. And you can take the quiz that we talked about there too.
Great. Entropy Nation, as I always say, you be you, just be the best you, and you will always empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate your prosperity. Until next week, guys, have a great week.